They've already decided what we are. Let's show them they're wrong. Thornvarel's words sliced the tension in the hall, low and level, not a rallying cry, just a fact. His breath clouded slightly in the engineered chill of the Grand Assembly Dome. Artificial atmosphere maintained a discomforting sterility, one that made his lungs ache with every drawn inhale. It wasn't just the cold. It was the weight of 200 alien species watching his species be judged from on high. The chamber itself was a colossal hemisphere of blackened basalt and crystalline alloys, raw, ancient, and unforgiving. Seats encircled a deep central stage like vultures around a carcass. Above, long threads of biosynthetic vines hung from a reflective dome, fluttering not with wind but with the soft mechanical pulses that measured political heartbeats. Every vibration meant something here. Every twitch of a representative's eye was a move in the game. Thorn stood alone on the lower dais. No advisors, no flags, no translation tech. Just a man in a gray matte exocoat, bearing Earth's fading insignia stitched near the left collarbone. 12 thin bars carved like claw marks, overlaid on a fractured orbital ring. No species asked what it meant anymore. They thought they already knew. Across from him, Commander Vextral of the Draconian Ascendancy stood behind a raised podium. More altar than seat, his scaled digits clasped with ceremonial stiffness. His jaw flexed as he spoke, through ridged mandibles that clicked in rhythm with disdain. Humanity's record speaks through its ruins, Vextral intoned, voice guttural and mechanical. Wars bred from greed, cities raised for pride, systems consumed without foresight. They are not prepared for inclusion. They are incompatible. Behind him, screens flared to life with segmented feeds. Not Earth's present, but its oldest wounds. Archive reels of mushroom-shaped detonations, cities torn by flame, masses stampeding in chaotic spirals. Visuals chosen for maximum impact. No balance, no context. Just rot curated for judgment. Thorn didn't flinch. Didn't blink. He knew every frame. He'd grown up in the aftermath of what they displayed. A murmur passed through the chamber. The Xerians adjusted their translator coils. The Trellians curled their retinal stalks inward. The Gore Unity, silent as always, pulsed soft signals through their breathing membranes, the colors shifting in tones of agreement. We are not displaying history. We are showcasing inevitability, Vextral said, curling his claws inward. Earth breeds collapse. The Draconian speaker's words hung thick in the air, dense with rehearsed righteousness. Then came the vote. A sequence of bio-ended stamps rippled through the chamber. Species by species, one by one, symbols turned crimson. The color of compliance, the color of subjugation. Thorn tracked each vote, not with dread, but with a peculiar clarity. 127, 168, 191. By 198 it was over. 4 symbols flickered blue. He didn't need to check who. The Lunarians, the Austravian matriarchs, the Saruxi Collective, and 1 rogue abstainer from the Mordel. Not enough, not even close. A metallic chime rang out, finality sealed by artificial bell. The council chair, nothing more than a ceremonial hologram with no true form, spoke the verdict without pause. Motion 1217 authorized. Planetary subjugation authorized. Earth is to be contained, stripped of independent capacity, and brought under conditional control pending further reassessment. Thorn's fists curled at his sides, but his face betrayed nothing. This wasn't the moment for outburst. This wasn't where battles were won. Vextral approached the edge of his platform, upper torso leaned forward. Representative Verrill, if that is still your designation, do you wish to record a final statement on behalf of your species? Thorn stepped forward, his boots impacting the floor with a deliberate weight. No amplification tech was offered. He didn't need it. When he spoke, it wasn't for the chamber. It was for the listening devices embedded across 1,000 neutral systems, the feeds watched by planets waiting to see how Earth would break. No appeal, no apology, only recognition, he said, voice even. You chose this outcome because you feared what we could become, not what we are. You see history, we see instruction. He gestured, not grandly, just enough to draw attention. You rely on votes and consensus. Earth learned in fire. We didn't forget what we were. We evolved despite it. He let the words hang there, not for drama, but as a deliberate pause. You look down on us as if you've risen, but all you've done is build taller perches. The chamber didn't erupt. There was no dramatic gasp, just the subtle scrape of a dozen seats adjusting, as if the entire assembly had shifted by a millimeter. Discomfort, not outrage. Vextral's gaze hardened. You will return to your planet under escort. Resistance will be met with force. Earth's skies will burn if it disobeys. Thorn gave no reply. He turned, walking back through the concentric rings of the dais. Each step echoed against the polished obsidian tiles. His path took him beneath the observation spire, down a corridor lined with sentry drones and retinal gates. 2 representatives attempted to intercept him, one from the Arkanshal, another from the Viren Accord. But Thorn ignored them. At the base of the corridor, a small transport craft awaited. Unmarked. Civilian registered. No military insignia. From the outside, it looked like a diplomatic return shuttle. Inside, however, it was something else. He stepped aboard, sealing the hatch behind him. The lighting shifted to a deep amber. A narrow strip of displays activated on the forward wall, reading only one line of transmission. Warp speed, command note online, clearance awaiting. He placed his hand on the bioskin interface pad. It scanned, authenticated, then opened a layered menu structure. No prompts, no confirmations. Just accept. Thorn's voice was calm as he spoke into the system. Link network node, begin activation sequence. Full deployment, no delay. A second screen flickered into view, showing rotating schematics. Tunnels embedded beneath ocean trenches, reactors buried beneath mountain ranges, and heat maps displaying subtle energy spikes already blooming across Earth's magnetosphere. Far beneath the chamber, where Earth had been condemned, its answer had already begun. The transport detached, gliding wordlessly into outbound transit corridors. Beyond the viewport, the Council's artificial moon faded into shadow, while Earth's distant sphere rotated into view. Small, stubborn, waiting. Thorn watched it come closer, but said nothing. Back in the assembly, a junior aide from the Cyric Coalition leaned toward his delegate. Do you think they'll comply? The delegate paused. His eye membranes retracted slightly. I think we just provoked something we didn't bother to understand. Status? 3. No trace signatures, replied Etris, eyes flicking over the analog array. No surveillance bleed. Channels clean. Commander Thorn Varel nodded once and stepped onto the magnetic descent plate. The reinforced shaft sealed above him with a vacuum lock hiss. Lights on the chamber wall flickered from amber to a deep vermilion as the platform dropped. The air grew denser as they plunged into the Earth's crust. Moisture collecting along his collar, the steel composite walls groaning with tectonic adjustment. His boots vibrated with the rhythmic grind of kinetic counterweights. No digital readouts. No remote controls. This system was buried beyond the reach of any network. Designed for one purpose: irreversible action. Ver removed his gloves as they neared the final sublevel. The temperature rise wasn't from friction, it was core proximity. Walls here weren't lined with alloys, but basalt and carbon-tempered bracings drilled into geothermal anchor points. No alien material had touched this place since its conception. Only Earthborn minds had mapped this vault. The platform slowed. Before him stretched a narrow walkway, barely illuminated by reactive filament lines embedded in the stone. A single figure stood ahead, lean, squared shoulders, rough stubble along his jawline, sleeves rolled back like a man at war with machinery. Varel, said the man without turning. Director Harvin, Thorn replied. Is the lattice cold? Harvin gestured toward a row of sealed columns, each one marked with irregular glyphs sourced from recovered draconian relay cores. Inside them, nanite clusters suspended in cryofusion stasis, dormant. Waiting. People haven't pulsed in 12 years, Harvin muttered. They'll wake angry. That's the point. A generator kicked behind the control wall, drawing power from subterranean magma conduits. Conduits that hadn't seen full load flow since the collapse of Site 9. Amber warning strips along the ceiling flickered in staggered sequences as the system began warming the lattice housing. The uplinks isolated. Anything we broadcast doesn't trace back. But once they activate, they'll look for command scaffolds. The enemy will detect power variants if they're watching geothermal shifts. Harvin warned. Be well, Verrill said. But by then we'll be past detection. He moved toward the center console. Flat, non-reflective, with a palm indentation deep enough to scan subdermal data strands. He laid his hand into it. A chime confirmed link. Confirmed designation, said the system. Verith, Thorn, primary directive. Voice print accepted. The console withdrew, revealing a buried chamber beneath translucent shielding. Within it, dozens of core nodes pulsed weakly in blues and reds, encased in shielded polymer. They resembled mechanical embryos, each one tied into a neuroadaptive thread network, stretching through the crust like artificial root systems. Verrill leaned toward the mic. Awaken lattice, deploy anchors, phase 1 only. Across the chamber, a low tremor moved through the floor. Mineral veins cracked in microfractures across the surface, revealing brief glimmers of conductive mesh running deeper. A wall mount display activated. No projections, no glow. The visual readout was raw feed. Seismic maps, nanite containment fields, node-to-node link diagnostics. Each pulse a signature of recovery. Each link forming the first arc of Earth's counter-infrastructure. Phase 1 initiated, the system confirmed. Awaiting secondary command. Harvin stepped beside him, eyes scanning the real-time cascade. You know what this triggers, don't you? We're past safe options. The Aegis Vault will spike during the cascade. We never tested it with this loadout. Verrill's expression didn't shift. That wasn't an oversight. We never intended a second chance. The lights shifted again, from red to cobalt. Core temperature readouts rose, indicating the fusion threads were reaching ignition density. The nanites still hadn't deployed, but their containers showed pressure movement. Internals were waking up. Across the room, Etris input the recalibration sequence. Recovered Tregloran matrices are holding. No degradation. Targeting nodes realigned to Earth's stratospheric curvature. Verrill's voice was flat. Cut latency. They'll disperse at the next approach vector. A low vibration shook the walls. Not seismic. Not structural failure. Activation. The nanite vault split open. Internal layers peeled back like petals under stress, revealing lines of dark matter-infused particulate suspended in magneto-lock. Then the locks failed, intentionally, and the particles poured into reinforced tunnels, carved through obsidian shelves, pathways sealed behind them. They're in the grid, Etris said, checking the diverging route logs. Spool rates holding? Harvin leaned on the edge of the console. That's 2 million autonomous units. No breaks. You're betting everything on their discretion? They're not programmed for discretion, they're designed to end foreign hardware on contact. And if something on Earth counts as foreign. Verrill glanced toward the sealed, top-level camera feed showing Earth's surface. Rotating satellite feeds cross-cut with zero-light installations embedded in populated sectors. He won't hit anything with a Terran lock signature. Anything else, we don't need. From a far terminal, the system flagged a new anomaly. Node 13 in the Antarctic Bort field pulsed erratically. Containment breach? Harvin asked. Verrill stepped forward. No, external interference. Something's pinging our seismic layers. The image switched. A draconian beacon scan pulse, a wideband sweep, was running passive observation above Earth's southern magnetic line. They're looking already. Etris muttered. Let them look, Verrill replied. He initiated the secondary phase. Tunnels beyond the primary command shaft began to deploy deeper integration arrays. Electrical and magnetic suppression tools that could override enemy signals before they penetrated atmosphere. From the walls, faint rattles echoed as dormant fusion couplers slammed into place. Steam hissed from thermal valves as retraction mechanisms pulled shielding out of alignment and activated the core bypass systems. One of the junction plates cracked. Harvin swore, diving to disengage the failsafe manually. In remote suppression, Verrill asked, "Not for those. If they overheat again, the system shorts for 12 sectors. We won't get 12 sectors. We'll get 30 seconds of surprise." That's enough. The reactor pool beneath them hissed again, this time louder. The air filled with the smell of calcium and scorched rock as the second layer of containment dropped away. RID saturation point reached, the system confirmed. Arrow moved back to the primary console. His fingers input the final sequence manually. Key, strokes, hard, deliberate, without reliance on pre-coded macros. Then he looked up. On the far wall, embedded in black stone, stood a sealed cylinder. No lights, no interface, no signature. The Aegis chamber. He didn't approach it. Not yet. Not until the assembly moved. "Transfer node control to orbital relays, set watch points at every thermal exit," he said. Harvin's reply was dry, already building redundancy nets. Verrill moved toward the far bulkhead, hand brushing the door mechanism. Before exiting, he paused. "We do not escalate first." Harvin blinked. "You think they'll believe restraint?" "No," Verrill said, stepping through. "I'm not doing it for them." The door sealed behind him. Cooling fans hissed through the sublevels as node feeds faded into standby. Earth had awakened a sliver of its buried arsenal, and no one beyond this chamber understood what that meant. They've crossed orbital boundary 5. The statement came from Lieutenant Gorin without emphasis or pause, but in Earth's orbital command station it was enough to shift the temperature in the room. Commander Verrill stepped up to the primary interface. No theatrics, no elevated displays, just a spread of pressure-reactive panels and direct neural feedback lines trailing into his wrist socket. Above, in geosynchronous space, the Draconian fleet deployed, tiered like a mechanical reef, with Trident formation carriers at the top and drone-screened annihilators bracing their flanks. Their positioning suggested arrogance. They believed Earth had no counter to wide-field suppression. That assumption was about to expire. "EMP net status," Verrill said, brushing his fingertips over the tactical bands aligned to the magnetosphere's curvature. "Pulse towers armed and cycling," Gorin responded, checking the diagnostic trail. "Grid coverage is optimal. We're not emitting, not even bleed-through." Across the hardened chamber, a heads-up display showed the three-dimensional kill zone mapped over Earth's atmospheric entry corridor. Icons tagged with Draconian registry signatures blinked into the outer ring. Each one represented a target moving on trajectories that presumed no resistance. "Trigger on visual disruption only," Verrill instructed. Not a moment earlier. His voice remained level, devoid of dramatics. He knew what was coming. This wasn't a battle. It was enforcement. The floor panels shifted slightly beneath their boots as Earth's planetary shield modules transitioned to passive flux mode, matching the ambient plasma field distortions the Draconian ships produced during approach. Not a weapon. The first Draconian cruiser breached the upper arc. Its gravitational weight collided with Earth's field, and the entry path shimmered. Nothing else happened. No alarms. No alerts. The room held its posture. 35 vessels now crossing the magnetopause, Gorin murmured, eyes scanning telemetry layers. Still no deviation from their flight plan. Verrill adjusted the focus on the central core interface. Below, the pulse towers buried across Earth's tectonic fractures waited. Each housed charged capacitors tied to geothermal arrays. They didn't broadcast. They listened. "Prepare sweep lock alignment," Verrill said. "Full ring, key by node variance, stagger timing." This wasn't about speed. It was about rhythm. Gorin keyed the relay. Alignment confirmed. 12-second delay spread. The next moment unfolded in silence until Earth's retaliation began. The EMP grid didn't flash. It didn't scream. It pulsed, like a breath drawn in reverse. The ships nearest to the field's reach experienced it first. Each one staggered by internal disarray, power systems shorting in isolation, command modules reinitializing with corrupted data. Weapons banks flickered between active and cold states. Shielding fractured into incomplete arcs. Draconian crews scrambled to reassert control, but their systems hadn't prepared for null field sequencing. Earth's towers didn't emit a continuous wave. They targeted control loops, alternating patterns mid-cycle, disrupting timing rather than strength. 37 ships in flux cascade, Goran called out. They've begun spatial stabilization maneuvers. No fire. Varel nodded once. They won't. They don't understand what failed yet. The heads-up display updated. Ship movement slowed as thruster outputs recalculated. Formation drifted from aggression into hesitation. Their lead vessel, marked Varessen Fang, attempted a correction maneuver. Pitch alignment to reacquire comms. Earth's grid anticipated that. Node 12 triggered its microburst. The Fang's bow convulsed. Shielding collapsed. Lights within the vessel dimmed as its artificial gravity reverted. They're blind, Varel said under his breath, eyes on the readout. They can't see what's stopping them, only that it works. The atmosphere in the room stayed tight, but tension morphed into momentum. Officers exchanged quick glances, each one measuring the unfolding scenario not as combat, but as calculated attrition. We have 63 nodes online, Goran reported. 15 still holding charge, no exposure. Good, Varel replied. Save them. They're not the last wave. Another vessel attempted a long-range scan sweep. A mistake. Node 14 pulsed. The scan array reversed polarity and collapsed into its own emitter core. The vessel lost orientation and tumbled. Still no explosion. No broadcast. Just disarray. We're past 70% disruption, Goran stated, his hands already moving to patch new grid extensions. We're locking them out faster than they can adapt. That's not enough, Varel answered. I want them embarrassed. He triggered a manual override on the visual loop and brought up the blackout map. A new display lit the far wall. Blank outlines of ships whose emissions had been forcibly scrubbed. The fleet appeared as hollow shapes, drifting without trace, cut off from their own registry signals. The image didn't show destruction. It showed removal. Kelly won't recover from this, Goran said, his voice carrying a faint edge now. Command integrity across their upper deck structures just degraded by 72%. That's not what I'm watching, Varel replied. He gestured toward the tactical anomaly on the feed's edge. A secondary wave, smaller, more agile ships, hovered at the entry perimeter. They hadn't breached. They were waiting, scanning, collecting data. They'll adapt next time, he said. We won't be able to rerun the same disruption sequence. Goran frowned. Want me to reprogram the anchor towers now? Not yet. Let them think we only had one pattern. The floor vibrated as the upper orbital traps reoriented. Earth had given the Draconian fleet no obvious reason to fire. No ship had been destroyed. No lives directly taken, but their confidence had been stripped, their formations broken, their technological assumptions inverted. They're holding position, Goran observed. All movement ceased, full standstill, exactly where we wanted them. Varel moved to the comm station, activated the relay on encrypted relay band 5. Mark the grid, begin radiometric shuffle, no emission patterns repeated. As the command initiated, the pulse towers began rotating their fields inward, creating complex, folded electromagnetic shapes that rendered tracking impossible. Earth was no longer responding to the invasion. Earth had overridden the rules of engagement. The door behind them opened. Director Harvin entered, wiping crystallized coolant off his forearms. I take it they tried to walk in. They got their answer, Varel replied without turning. And now we start making decisions they can't anticipate. He turned to the relay station, input a final code into the redundant control line. Bring nanite batch 0 online. Spool to altitude anchors. Prepare atmospheric weave at grid 6. Harvin raised an eyebrow. You're dropping the swarms already? None of them, Varel said, closing the panel. We're shaping the field they think they're studying. Start the broadcast feed. Don't clean it. They need to see the dirt. Commander Thorn Varel's voice was blunt as he stepped onto the transmission platform housed beneath the Polar Archive vault. The chamber was built for containment, not comfort. Walls of raw aggregate and carbon groove shielding reflected none of the overhead light. The floor beneath his boots crackled as the data relay warmed, fiber conduits folding open like a breached chest cavity. 2 technicians flanked the core transmitter, each hunched over twin control interfaces lined with analog knobs and flick-swig columns. No neural uplinks here. Too traceable. This had to be firewalled against intrusion from every known protocol standard used by the Galactic Assembly. Lieutenant Solon adjusted his headset and spoke without glancing up. We're linked to 73 rogue relays, 5 assembly-compliant satellites, 1 subchannel and draconian homeband. Varel's reply was quiet. Inject them first. Let the assembly feel it from inside. The wall-mounted broadcast unit buzzed to life. Heat radiating from its cooling vents, sending the bitter scent of ion-scorched plastic through the narrow airspace. A low vibration pulsed through the transmission scaffold, as the feed synchronized with underground storage. Solon keyed in the activation node. Broadcast relay active, loop Q ready, you're live in 18 sectors. The platform's heads-up display populated with cross-feed tiles. Each window began playing scrambled data fragments. Archive footage, intercepted council logs, and video from places most of the galaxy believed had been lost in local disputes or pirate incursions. Varel stepped to the edge of the transmitter ring. A lone camera mount pointed at him, recording at sub-pulse frame rate, intentionally jagged to resemble assembly-grade surveillance. This message is not authorized, he said into the open channel, which makes it real. He paused, allowing the systems to catch and distribute the signal outward before continuing. You know what Earth is. You've seen the curated compilations, our wars, our ruins, our failures. But you haven't seen the ones responsible for the narratives you've consumed. The screens behind him shifted, footage began unspooling. Not polished, not arranged, raw streams. One showed the moon of Valaris 6, smoldering under draconian thermic clusters. Another, a planetary hospital reduced to shards under a so-called reclassification strike. The third, hardest to watch, was interior security cam footage from a colony disarmament zone, where draconian enforcers interrogated civilians with gene-splitting resonance fields. This isn't new, Varel said. It's just been denied visibility. The feed changed again, now playing council chamber recordings not meant for broadcast, assembly members in off-channel strategy meetings, agreeing to remove Earth from all voting forums. Secret orders to blacklist aid to human colonies. One log, heavily watermarked with the assembly's internal channel key, contained the final vote to allow Earth's containment operation. Weeks before the session was publicly announced. We didn't hack these, Varel said. We didn't need to. You left them in your own archives because you assumed no one would be allowed to show them. The technicians remained still, watching the outputs flicker as their node connections stabilized. Across the chamber, an old antenna array built into the rock face began humming from stress. Dust peeled from the ceiling. Lieutenant Solon gestured to a new relay on the main interface. Multiple assembly member worlds are mirroring the stream. Crowd densities near terminals have spiked. The scene on screen now shifted again, this time to a handheld clip. It showed a draconian officer, unmasked, dragging a civilian across the soil of Ural's outer province, pressing a boot into the child's chest before ordering a cleansing drone to move in. The audio was rough, but the command translated clearly. One less deviation. Morel didn't speak. He didn't have to. The message was speaking for itself. Back in the Draconian High Command satellite offices, Admiral Odrin Kalthas watched the stream from an auxiliary viewport while his own officers scrambled to track the signal origin. His jaw clenched. He hadn't expected Earth to lead with disclosure. He had assumed they'd retaliate with weapons. This cut deeper. The assembly reactions rippled. The delegate from the Vrolan Pact stood and walked out of their chamber, flanked by aides who refused to answer questions. The Sorellan Accord requested a suspension of all draconian coordination measures. The Akoran technocracy announced an immediate review of their treaties. Lieutenant Solon turned. They're splintering. Verrill raised his eyes toward the core broadcast feed. They're recalculating, not because of morality, but because they were seen. The feed now displayed a single image, an overlay of Earth's defense network, paired with recovered schematics from Draconian war-class destroyers. The alignment was undeniable. The implication clear. Earth had studied them for years, and they never realized. I am not here to explain our anger, Verrill said. I am not here to beg understanding. I am here to remind you. What you tried to erase learned how to survive inside your shadow. Another feed opened, this one from Earth's own archives. It showed the nanite deployment process. Surgical, clinical, deployed through underwater conduits and fault line injectors. There was no explosion, no damage, only interruption, systems failing without impact. Solon leaned in. They've frozen updates on the public assembly portal. They're scrambling to scrub the source. Let them, Verrill replied. The damage is already embedded. He turned back to the feed and input one final data packet, a complete transmission log from the assembly's internal comm exchanges over the last 6 days. Blacklists, censorship commands, coercive adjustments to planetary education channels. The feed released it all. Across dozens of planets, assembly-aligned species found their trusted channels replaced by records of manipulated narrative. Parents pulled children from lecture halls. Protest tags spread faster than any official counterstatement. Solon glanced over. Verrill, this won't be undone. That's the point, he said. Then he walked to the side interface, accessed the secondary command console, and opened the encrypted relay linking them to Earth's Martian orbital station. Tell them to prepare the next package. We're not done. They're not falling in line. They're walking out. Admiral Odrin Kalthas didn't whisper the words. He said them flatly. Eyes locked on the fractured thread of transmission feeding from the assembly chamber to the encrypted observation deck aboard his command cruiser, the Warden's Spine. From the viewport, a council drone spiraled away without destination. Its beacon disabled mid-patrol. The message was clear. Control was slipping. Behind him, Captain Yalvek shifted uneasily. 5 delegations have suspended voting rights. 3 demanded a formal tribunal. If the assembly fractures now, Kalthas turned, his hand raised to stop the spiraling thought. Then we collapse with them. Unless we pivot. The comm console lit with an encoded burst. No designation, no source. He recognized the pattern, Earth's response relay. Kalthas tapped the sequence. The display flared with tight-beamed audio. Commander Verrill's voice came through unfiltered. If you're ready to speak, send the backdoor frequencies. If not, stay where you are and watch your name rot. There was no signature, no demand, just an invitation into consequence. Kalthas exhaled through his nose, the breath catching slightly as it met the recycled dryness of the control deck. His gaze slid across the embedded comm ports lining the... Deactivate transponder relay theta, he said. Purge system logs. Clear all protocol archives for the last 60 hours. Yalvek's jaw clenched. That's treason under the Accord. Kalthas nodded. So is erasing hospitals. He keyed in a hardwire command. Earth's transmission interface blinked once. Accepted. Within seconds, Earth's underground grid received the Draconian Ascendancy's blind zones, frequency masks, and priority ping delays, the very tools used to bypass assembly detection during covert strikes. Send it all, Kalthas ordered. Even the emergency overrides for colony beacon sweeps. Give them the routes. Yalvek stared at him, voice tight. You think they'll spare you? No, Kalthas said, turning back to the viewport. But they'll understand why I chose to defect. On Earth Martian Relay Outpost, Zavik Thrun hunched over a deep wave frequency tuner, claws tapping against analog toggles as the new data streamed in. He was Tregloran, once part of the engineering arm that developed the Draconian fleet's communication lattice. Now, he used that knowledge for sabotage. He clicked his mandibles once, then pulled up the nav beacon disruptor schematic. The Draconians depended on quantum-locked orientation beacons, 10 per sector, each embedded with spatial sync crystals. Disabling them wasn't brute force. It required dissonance injection. Payload is viable, Zavik muttered, coordinates mapped. He reached into the chassis of the terminal and inserted a spike conduit. Handmade, scraped from old jump calibrator nodes and fused with Terran ceramic shielding, not elegant, functional. Which sector first? Asked Arvin, Earth's liaison officer. Zavik didn't look up. Whichever one still believes they're winning. He transmitted the disruption loop into Beacon Sector 9. Across orbit, the nearest Draconian ship wobbled as its primary orientation pulse degraded. It rotated 3 degrees off course, enough to nudge it into the arc of Earth's field grid. Within seconds, the ship's shields unraveled. Arvin glanced at the panel, eyes wide. How many more can we hit before they recalibrate? Depends how arrogant they still are, Zavik replied. If they think it's a glitch, I'll take 6 more. In the assembly, panic brewed. Delegates paced. The Atracian envoy snapped his staff, a ceremonial artifact of sovereignty, against the chamber floor. It broke in half, fragments scattering like snapped bone. Across the hall, the Sindalar representative removed his council badge and dropped it without ceremony. A flicker of disassociation swept the delegates. Councillor Rirak of the Unari bloc stood. The vote no longer holds legitimacy. We were manipulated, our channels tampered with. His accusation echoed. Councillor Eshkar of the Vaughn Collective shouted from the far tier. Then why did no one protest before Earth exposed it? The room fractured into shouting. Not unity, not protocol, a cacophony of regret, blame, and fractured intent. And through it all, Earth's unauthorized transmission played on a residual loop in the outer corridors. Back in Earth's tactical bunker, Burrell reviewed the latest alignment logs. Nanonites adjusting to new blind sectors, Solon said beside him. Kalthus's data was uncorrupted. He gave us the knife they used to carve us, Burrell replied, eyes focused on the heads-up feed of Draconian fleet motion patterns. Each vessel now drifted within a newly reprogrammed perimeter, their anchors no longer grounded, their triangulation fading. Verrill keyed a direct channel. Zavok's face appeared, lined, still streaked with copper wire residue from the last sabotage node he wired. We have full insertion? Verrill asked. 7 of 10 beacons disabled, 3 more being rewritten. Any pushback? Zavok snorted once, a guttural Tregloran noise of amusement. They're still trying to reset manual alignment. They think it's internal drift. Then keep them in the dark? No, Zavik said flatly. I'll keep them confused. On the assembly floor, Councillor Dreads of the Rukon Syndicate finally spoke, voice low. If Earth has allies inside our own command, then this is no longer a negotiation. It's a collapse. Kalthus, now no longer part of that room, watched the footage from his cruiser in orbit. He placed his null-coder Draconian badge on the command table, opened a stasis lock, and dropped it inside a containment cell labeled Voided Identities, Do Not Restore. Yalvek returned, a thin scar of worry across his brow. Transmission logs wiped. We're clean. No, Kalthus replied, powering down the command node. We're marked. From Earth's outpost on Deimos, another feed initiated. This one embedded directly into neutral trade stations near the galactic border. The footage was brief. Kalthus's final authorization to Earth's relay grid, followed by the caption, Admiral Odrin Kalthus, war architect turned witness. There was no speech, just the moment, a name repurposed. On Earth, Verrill nodded as the feed reached saturation. They're running out of truths to stand on. Solon adjusted the display parameters, revealing incoming chatter from fringe assembly members. Messages arrived in bursts, not official, not aligned, just 2 words each time, "We're listening." Varel stared at the words a moment longer, then reached for the encrypted control line. "Prep the next insertion. Draconians haven't screamed yet. That means they're still pretending. They're not waiting this time. Line breach at Teleron Crater. Elevation, 19er7. Solon didn't shout. He didn't need to. The screen said it louder. Earth's upper shield band fractured in the worst possible region, over the active geothermal vent zone, where layered protections ran thinnest. Commander Varel locked onto the heads-up control. His eyes traced the red scatter points radiating from the rupture. The entry wasn't a tear, it was a drilled breach. The enemy adapted. Origin vector? Shaped, bent projectiles, streamlined for field wobble. They bent through the ion flux. Timing? 6 seconds. An impact. Now. The bunker floor pitched under the first direct strike since the siege began. Dust cascaded from the seams above. Status lights dimmed briefly, then stabilized. Varel tapped into the kinetic mesh feedback. Switch to fallback shielding. Begin nanite layering on the breach. Solon moved. EMP fallbacks cold, secondary units fried on the first hit. Override it. Skip EMP, go nanite now. No pause, no discussion. Across the Teleron perimeter, ground units scrambled inside the command trench as another wave of kinetic spears struck. The first pierced through the thermal baffles, the second hit the communications array. Sparks exploded along the trench walls. One technician dropped to a crouch, cradling a burst tablet. "Shields are collapsing in grid C7, he gasped. "Field won't stabilize." General Tavrik arrived, trench coat flaring behind him, eyes scanning the damage with military indifference. "Distribute shields manually. Anchor node arrays around vent clusters. You have 60 seconds. The technician hesitated. Tavrik didn't. He grabbed the man by the collar, dragged him upright, shoved a fresh control device into his hands and pushed him forward. "Do your job, or get out of my line." Above, the orbital readout shifted. Draconian command ships repositioned. Their formation was surgical. Tight spirals, no broadcast lag. They were aiming for Earth's faults, not its cities. "They've gone tactical," Solon observed from the command bunker. "Targeting field to core seams, not random." "They're mining us from orbit," Varel said. "They want us to collapse inward. We won't last 5 more impacts at this rate. Then we redirect them." He opened a secondary panel, keyed in the Deepwell tether interface. On the interface, the dormant node arrays glowed dimly, the fail-safe nanite generators embedded in mantle strata. He keyed them to move, not as a defensive sweep, but as a misdirection pulse. "Give them a power bloom," Varel said. "Let them think we're reinforcing Quadrant A. Risk? They'll dive harder into the wrong section." Solon didn't hesitate. The power redirection activated, bleeding reserve energy into artificial hotspots near the secondary mountain range. On orbit, the Draconian fleet turned toward it. One ship accelerated beyond its group, Virex Talon, a command escort craft. It lit its main thrusters and initiated a targeting scan on the Bloom site. "Peter, that one's leading," Varel said. "Bring it down." "No EMP fallback. Use the override." Solon accessed the nanite override relay and injected a controlled cascade into the orbital climb vector. Nanites flared through magnetically curved altitudes, coiling like smoke across the high stratosphere. The Talon hit them at full thrust. The ship jerked, its rear stabilizers seized, engines misfired. The propulsion stream inverted, bending the vessel into a slow axial spin. "Engine lock confirmed," Solon said. "They're trying to compensate. They can't." "Good. Next." Varel toggled the input feed and keyed for Zavok. The engineer's face blinked in sweat. Sweat streaked across his upper jawline. Behind him, sparks flared from open conduits. "They're dumping field disruptors into our orbit," Zavok grunted. "Crude, fast-assembled garbage. It's working." "Solutions. Redirect local gravity pockets. Pull their own payloads out of path." Is that operational? Zavok yanked a cable free. It's about to be. He vanished from the feed. 30 seconds later, Earth's orbital sensors showed 3 incoming payloads begin to drift off course. One crashed into the rear flank of a companion ship, rupturing its outer stabilizer with a bloom of fragment trails. In the trench, Tavrik barked over the wind. "How long until that breach is sealed?" The corporal responded, half buried beneath a pile of crushed soil shielding. "Manual overrides jammed. We're patching with layered nanoweave." "Faster." The corporal's gloved hand jammed the patch tool into the wall conduit. It spat compressed fiber and thermal bind into the breach. The readout climbed slowly. 45% structural retention. Then 60. Then 80. "Breach contained," she shouted. "Reinforce it, triple seal." Above them, Earth's mainframe shifted power from defensive towers to the adaptive mesh. "They're not testing us anymore," Solon said in the bunker. "They're going for a breach. We'll let them try." Varel accessed the tertiary system. A blend of scavenged signal jammers and back-engineered draconian comm disruptors. Not elegant, but effective. He selected the fleet's lead vessel, Sovereign Ash. He flooded its signal bands with recursive noise, looping old combat footage and false telemetry across its primary interface. The ship paused in orbit. Its companions hesitated. "Disarray forming," Solon confirmed. "They've lost synchronization." Tavrik's voice came through the field link. "Teleron stabilized. Shield back online. Patching feeds now." Varel leaned back. "How many more?" 17 orbitals uncommitted. "But they're watching." "Good. Let them observe something new." He accessed the fallback interface and initiated a coordinated crossfeed. Every draconian signal emitter within visual range now received looped data, showing Earth's defenses reforming faster than the incoming damage. A psychological trap. Across orbit, the formation shifted again. No cohesion. Each ship now responded separately. "They're panicking," Solon said. "They're calculating." Varel pressed the final override. A visual imprint across every enemy deck. A replay of the Teleron breach recovery. No audio. Just Earth rising through the aftermath. "No one speaks. No one explains," he said. "They'll assume it means we're not tired," Solon replied. "We're not." Confirmed final relay input. Commander Varel's tone held no warmth as he stood inside the Vault Core command chamber. The room wasn't carved, it was drilled, its architecture following the layered strata of the Earth's mantle, built around pressure, not comfort. Steam hissed from deep pipe junctions, rising in controlled bursts around the central interface. Red indicators blinked along each wall, each one tied to containment stability, thermal sync, and target tracking across orbit. "Input confirmed," Tavrik responded, stepping forward with the secondary launch tablet in hand. "All 26 sequence triggers validated. One left." They faced the Aegis Protocol's primary launch pillar, 2 meters thick, lined with impact shielding, and capped by an ignition ring of spinning concentric cores. Each rotation triggered a different layer of the countermeasure. Each movement narrowed options across the entire battlefield above them. "Council's transmitting now," Solon muttered behind them. "They're watching, trying to stop this." "Too late," Varel said. He turned his key. The core didn't rumble, it shifted. Layers of dense alloy parted, revealing a sunken pedestal. Within it, the Aegis trigger sat. Geometric, silver-gray with faint illumination from its embedded uplink nodes. It wasn't just a weapon, it was Earth's inheritance. "All authorizations validated," Tavrik said. "Initiate." "Commence the lift," Varel ordered. A deep groan traveled up from the Earth. Not from machinery, but from weight. The kind that had never been allowed to surface before. Far above them, in the uninhabited North Polar Defense Sector, a mountain split down its middle. The crust peeled open in a clean line, revealing the rising cylinder of the Aegis core. Inside the assembly, chaos erupted. Delegates shouted over each other. The Unari representative attempted to issue a quorum override. The Treason Alliance demanded a ceasefire vote. But the feed was already showing them the truth. A weapon rising from Earth's geological vault, designed for one task and one task only. It's active, a Sorellan officer whispered from his station. It's not a bluff. Kalthus stood alone in a secured Draconian Council observation room, watching the feed. They built it beneath our maps, he said under his breath. On board Earth's command chamber, Varel reached the final interface. A biometric pad slid out from the panel, flanked by 3 physical toggles, each one marked by color, not language. He placed his palm flat. A countdown began. 30 seconds. Solen confirmed. Draconian fleet status. Tightening formation, no retreat order. They don't believe it'll fire, Tavrak said. People will, Varel replied. The Aegis pillar clicked. Once for each ring alignment. At 22 seconds, the control lines locked. At 16, power flooded into the thermal capacitors mounted beneath the crust. At 10, deep frequency vibrations coursed through the crust. Solen glanced at the external sensor feed. Council just issued a planetary-scale halt signal, universal override. No reaction, Tavrak said. Maybe think they still matter. Let them. 5 seconds. Varel reached for the override panel and keyed in one final safeguard, redirection protocol. If the fleet disengaged within the next 10 seconds, the blast would be dampened, rerouted to orbit, and fragmented across space. Failsafe engaged, he said aloud. It's their choice now. The feed remained unchanged. Draconian fleet ships continued forward trajectory. No shift, no retreat. Then we're done. 0. The chamber locked. From the exposed peak of the polar deployment shaft, the Aegis chamber opened fully. A ring of white heat pulsed outward. Non-visible to organic eyes but captured instantly by enemy systems. The transmission spike disrupted navigational grids, ignited defensive fields, and scrambled thermal resonance layers. Above Earth, the fleet blinked, then broke. The blast was not light. It was pressure. A compression wave, folding the vacuum between points of trajectory, pulling the front line into collapse. Hulls warped, stabilizers folded inward, core reactors misfired and fractured. One command ship vanished in under a second, pulled into a directional implosion without debris. Another listed sideways, weapons firing at random as the targeting array jammed with Earth's backfed signal noise. In the command chamber, Tavrik watched the heads-up display flick through status feeds. 18 ships down. 7 retreating. 4 unresponsive. And the flagship? Varel asked. Solen watched the sensor sweep. Still holding, but drifting. No return fire. They're waiting to see what's left. The chamber vented heat downwards. Cracks formed across the alloy tiling near the base. The weapon was already cooling. No speeches. No cheers. Just numbers shifting downward. In the assembly, the Trevin delegate slumped in his seat. The Unari block issued a halt on all forward operations. One by one, the flags across the assembly dome dimmed. Their diplomatic channels severed. Not by Earth, but by shame. Aaron stepped away from the panel. It's done. Should we initiate a secondary sequence? Solen asked. No. We not. Because they're not moving anymore. He turned toward the encrypted uplink that led to Earth's Martian relay. Zavok's channel blinked once. Transmit the deactivation code. Archive everything. Solen hesitated. You want them to know this was the only use? They'll fear it more that way. As the chamber cooled and the last ripple of Aegis energy faded beyond orbit, Varel removed his gloves and pressed both hands against the cold surface of the locked core. We didn't build it to scare them, he said, not looking up. We built it so we wouldn't have to explain ourselves. A feed chimed from the outer relay node. But it was not draconian. It was simpler. They weren't sending weapons. They were sending a request. Commander, Solen said. They're asking to talk. Council chamber feed is open, Solen reported. But half their seats are empty. Commander Varel didn't acknowledge it immediately. He stood beside the orbital window in Earth's high-atmosphere command station, eyes fixed on the shattered pattern above. What remained of the Draconian fleet drifted without formation, dark hulls tumbling, guidance arrays fractured, their former elegance lost in gravityless confusion. Not even scavengers dared approach yet. Tavrik joined him, boots echoing on the reinforced alloy floor. "They've redrafted the vote," he said. "Motion to rescind Article 719, Earth Subjugation Order, ratification pending. Unanimous reversal, not one objection." Varel turned, his expression didn't shift. "Fear isn't consent. What else?" Story block dissolved. Unari abstained. Sindelar offered recognition, no conditions. Bailey learned what diplomacy means after losing the leverage. Tavrik opened a relay channel. "Your presence is requested in the assembly feed. They want to hear Earth's terms. They'll get them." The walk to the comlink platform took seconds. No preparation, no ceremony. Varel stepped into frame, the single uplink casting his image across hundreds of council systems. The chamber was not silent. It was still. Representatives didn't speak. They watched. Some slumped. Others stared forward without moving. Delegates, once thunderous, now sat amid the aftermath of their own misjudgment. Varel spoke, calm, clear. "You voted 212 in favor, 4 opposed. You called Earth unstable, violent, incompatible with order." A few heads turned. None interrupted. "You labeled us a risk to peace. Not because of our actions, but because of our nature. Because you thought we wouldn't survive long enough to matter." He tapped the console. Behind him, the heads-up display fed live orbital footage. Twisted hulls of the Draconian assault fleet orbited Earth in slow decay, their remnants forming an unintentional ring around the planet. A warning written in debris. "You watched our systems resist without retaliation, then adapt without hesitation, then dismantle your finest warships using tools we built in caves beneath frozen mountains. We didn't copy you. We studied you." Counselor Drez shifted. His hand hovered over his data pad, but he didn't activate it. "We didn't escalate. We ended what you began. We didn't ask for tribute. We asked to be left alone." Zavik's transmission pinged through, brief, private. "They're recalibrating sector trade maps around Earth," he said, "and sending us corridor sovereignty recognition." Varel didn't react. His focus stayed on the fractured assembly. "Earth won't issue reparations. We won't negotiate seats. We won't ask for approval." He paused, letting them absorb each word. "We ask for neutrality." There was no applause, no outburst. The absence of resistance spoke louder. "You will not station war assets in our system. You will not issue blockades. You will not interfere in our reconstruction. In return, Earth offers no expansion, no interference, and no alliance unless requested." Counselor Rerak opened a transmission. "You're declaring unilateral sovereignty." "We're accepting what your actions proved," Varel replied. "That Earth has no peers here." In Earth's command center, Tavrik monitored the incoming messages. Every allied channel responded with affirmative markers. Unaligned systems echoed acceptance. Still in orbit, under restricted clearance, Herkefel forwarded a single word. "Acknowledged." Below, across Earth's surface, cities that once blacked out now lit their grids. Communications reactivated. Civil defense nets disbanded. Children returned from shelters. No parades. Solon stepped closer to Varel, speaking low. "We could have demanded leadership. We earned it. That's not leadership, that's conquest. You think they'll forget? They'll remember. That's enough." In the assembly feed, the Draconian seat remained dark. No representative. No signal. "Where are they now?" Varel asked. Tavrik replied. "Evacuated from council jurisdiction. Internal collapse. The command hierarchy's fracturing. They'll rebuild, somewhere. Yes. But never above us again." Varel ended the transmission. The feed dissolved. Only Earth's insignia remained. A globe cut by circuitry arcs, surrounded by orbit lines, etched in bronze. Outside, Earth's fleet continued to hold position. Not in motion, not in parade. Ships floated evenly, weapons offline. No new orders issued. Their position was clear. From now on, the center of gravity had shifted. Tavrik stood beside him once more. What now? Varel considered the question. We reset. We bury the dead. We file the protocols. Then we prepare again. For another war? For something worse, Varel said. For recognition. It's louder than war, and harder to survive. Behind him, the debris of an empire moved with the momentum of failure. Council worlds would recover, alliances would reform, but Earth would no longer be mentioned in hypotheticals. It had become a constant. Tavrik glanced once more at the external scans. I wonder what they'll write about this. For another decade. They won't need to. Their sky will remind them. As the Earth's systems stabilized and the strategic feeds powered down, Commander Varel stepped away from the uplink station. His boots struck the deck with finality. The war wasn't paused. It was over. No enemy had the nerve to send another signal.